So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I am so glad to see you. We got like a full house. It's not often I get this type of house. I'm feeling pretty good right about that. My name is Dedrick Martin, Superintendent for Caledonia Community Schools, and I'd like to introduce two people who are just here with me. And first is Kelly Clark, so she can just raise her hand. She's our Communications and Community Relations Coordinator. And then I have Mr. Matthew Hess. He's Executive Director of Operations, Maintenance and Transportation. So we want to give you kind of a brief presentation that'll take about 25 minutes. And I'll kind of go through this because I want to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And it can be about things you've seen in this presentation. It could be things completely outside of this presentation. My commitment is that we will do the very best to answer every question that we can. And if I just don't know, I'm not going to make it up on the spot. I'll just say I don't know. But Kelly or myself or Matt will probably get your contact information, because what we like to do is at least follow up to try to make sure that someone in our office will get you the answer to your question if we don't know, versus making it up on the spot. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and begin with our dialogue, but I think the most important thing to do, I think, when you're a school district is to start out with some of the positives. And I am happy to say that we have a lot of tremendous points of pride in our community. So one, all of our schools have received an A rating from the Michigan Department of Education based on test score proficiency. More impressive, in my opinion, I think for the first time that I'm aware of in our school community, 7 of our 8 buildings were identified as reward schools by the Michigan Department of Ed. What that is they look at each building and they compare you with other school buildings that have a similar demographic population as your building. So when you think of, let's say, Kettle Lake Elementary and Dudden, because there is a significant difference in the free and reduced lunch count, those two won't be compared in the same subgroup because they want to try to have a little bit of apples to apples and not apples to bananas. But with that being said, 7 of our 8 buildings were identified as reward schools, meaning that they were in the top 5% of schools within that category within the state for proficiency and for growth. So we feel very good that we are heading in the right direction. And what I think makes that even more significant, if you think about the last 2 years dealing with COVID, all you heard in the state news, all you heard in the federal headlines were, because of COVID, learning loss, and all of this stuff, that you're going to see worse performance out of schools. And by and large, the majority of the school districts in the state and across the country fit that pattern. Except in Caledonia, our story is different. We actually saw slight increases coming out of COVID in the 2021 school year, and then we saw increases again in the 21-22 school year. So that's where this information is coming from last year's school data. And then we took it a step further and we said, well, let's go back to 2016, 17, 18, 19, before we even heard of the word COVID. Our performance today in most of our buildings is higher today than they were before COVID. So we are pretty pleased, and we feel like that's showing in a lot of ways we're moving in the right direction. We still have a very high graduation rate, about 14% higher than like the state average, and significantly higher than the county average. Last year, our graduating class amassed almost $2.9 million in scholarship funding. We feel pretty good about that. And a couple years ago, if you were around, I did a lot of changing with the transportation department. One, we were going to elementary school zones in terms of, instead of just all schools of choice, meaning that you live at Kettle Lake and we bus you all the way over to Paris Ridge and back. We are saying, like, if you live in this zone, that's your school zone. You can choose to go to another school, but you have to go catch transportation either in that boundary or you would have to transport. It accomplished two things for us. One is we noticed because we had this very complicated system that's great when you're a real small community, it had grown to the point where it wasn't really efficient. And so we noticed that the majority of our kids were on the school for more than an hour coming to school, and they were on the bus for more than an hour coming home from school. I'm happy to say that of our 19 elementary routes, or our multiple elementary routes, 19 of them were the average ride time was over an hour before we started this process. Today, the average ride time is under an hour for all 19 of those buses because of this change. In addition to that, when you add up the total mileage that all of our buses drove each day collectively, I remember I was impressed by a stat that said that if you add all those miles up, you could drive from Caledonia to San Francisco and back in a single day.
Oh, wow.
Because of the changes, you can't get that far anymore. We have saved over 250,000 miles a year. So if you love to play with math, that means 1,300 miles less per day, saving us about $1,100 per day that we can drive back into the system to better compensate our transportation department. So we did give them a significant increase recently. And we can drive back into the system for maintenance operations and the education of kids. So we are very happy with that statistic because it's evidence that a lot of these changes we're making is not just changes out of we don't like something, but we're always looking for ways where we can get better as a system and be more efficient as a system. So there are copies of the presentation, and if you didn't get one, we have some extra up here. This is also on our website. I am not going to read all those things to you, so don't panic.
Can I get that?
But
Anybody?
I wanted to
Yes.
give the list of things that were completed from the 2020 bond. So if you recall, back in May of 2020, in March, I think it was like March 12th, March 13th, like the whole state and the country came to a grinding halt as we all went to lockdown with COVID. We still had an issue on the ballot for May 20th. We went forward and we were very honored that our community supported us with that. Coming out of that, we got started quickly in some priority projects. One, kind of with that transportation piece, we moved not only to elementary zones, but we moved to K4, 5, 6. This building is a 7-8 facility now instead of a 6-7-8 structure. And we needed to get this building prepared for that change. We needed to get Craft prepared for that change. So that was our first priority in the bond. Doing some of those things and taking care of some base level changes with roofs and parking lot. Then we started to go to other areas. So this is just kind of a listing of the things that we accomplished so far in the 2020 bond. We were moving fast, we were rolling, which is great. And you can find a more comprehensive packet of information on our webpage. So you just have to go to the 2020 bond website up there. But probably coming in 2021, we started to notice something when we were tailing off the first round of projects. We were planning and going into the development of the community center, which is going to be across the street. Thank you very much. But one of the things that we noticed as we were finishing some of the components of Duncan Lake and Craft, we started to feel the supply chain issues. So things that should have been completed in the summer of 2020, we couldn't get some of the things in place. So it dragged out until like December of 2020, January of 2021. And the other thing is we started to see this uptick in pricing that everybody was feeling. You know, at the grocery store, at the gas station, everywhere you look, we're feeling that pricing. So we were down the line and we got bids for our community center, and it was more than what we anticipated. So we did some value engineering to try to make some things a little bit cheaper and still move forward. But we were afraid of what was going to happen moving further. So we asked the architects and engineers to get together and start telling us, what are you seeing in the market? And start giving us some cost estimate and projections. And in essence, what this graph shows, from diesel fuel to the highest, down to bid pricing, which is labor, things have risen between 18% and 237%. The average was about a 42% actually increase across the board for construction and manufacturing of goods and services. That was making things unsustainable for us. So, we have a lot of remaining projects going forward, and we have been working on some of those projects based on conversations with the Board of Education, such as the guardrail at Kettle Lake for playground safety, doing some things to special program offices here at Duncan Lake, traffic signage, some window film installation for safety. So we're still moving forward with some things. We got some projects that are currently, and actually those are some things completed. We got some projects that are currently underway, but have been adjusted based on the price hikes that we saw. More of these projects that are adjusted based on the price hikes that we saw. And again, it's a lot of information, so you have a copy of it, you can get it on the website, but just so there's some time for some dialogue, I'm just kind of going through these some of these kind of fast. But I think the big piece is we started talking to the board, and the reality is $88 million in 2020 based on this rapid, unusual times that we have saw with inflation does not have the same buying power today. And so we basically presented the board with a number of options, but I'm gonna boil it down to make it simple. One option was we have to start significantly cutting portions of this bond and just say we're not going to do it. Or we're going to look at a supplemental bond, because you cannot just absorb or value engineer a 40% overall increase. And so some of the things we were looking at, and particularly I'll pick on Dutton Elementary, we could still build an elementary building, but it would be very substandard as compared to any building that you have built in this community for schools. So you're not looking at steel or brick structures, you're looking at something else at a much cheaper price, and typically a well-built school will run you anywhere from 60 to 80 years. And depending on how you build it, it may become more or less obsolete based on the design, but 60 years is still a good mark. We were looking at building buildings that were designed to last maybe 25, 30 years. That's not necessarily what you want to see in a school facility. And our board, I think, made a wise decision saying that it would be inappropriate to value engineer a building down that much and call that acceptable based on our history and our track record in our community. So they gave us the challenge of this supplemental bond, saying that we want to go back and do elementary, the Dutton Elementary the right way. And the other thing is we talked about significant renovations on site, but if you visited that site, doing those renovations on site were less than ideal because of the location. It is no longer a walkable community when you're thinking of elementary kids. It is surrounded and it's in the middle of an industrial complex. So we feel that this 2023 supplemental bond will strengthen our schools and communities by continuing to make this place an attractive place to live and to work, and keeping our property values high. And we know that's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, You want your property values strong because that means that you have a great community and it's attractive to live in. And if you ever go to sell your house, it's worth a lot. But at the same time, we understand that there's a tax implications that go along with that. But we haven't been, or I have not been affiliated with school communities where you have really high property values in a suburban area and really poor quality schools. We have great academic quality, and right now our schools, some of them need some attention and some work, and sometimes it's not sexy. It might be the roof, the boilers, the parking lots, transportation needs, those things. But those are still important to keep safe, quality schools for our kids to go and have a great educational experience, just as well as the academic programming. So we're looking at that. We also feel that this will help us continue our track record of success inside and outside of the classroom. I've shown you evidence that we're making changes academically that's showing results. We're making changes in terms of the system to try to be more efficient and frugal with the dollars that we have and drive that back into the system where it's helping in a direct benefit to the students or the staff or all of the above, because we know that those things are important. But making sure that we stay on that trajectory, that's what this supplemental bond is about. Also, because of the first time when we went out for this bond, we started looking at the data in 2019. That's when everything was compiled. At that time, we could go out for a zero mill increase, so a zero tax rate millage increase, and we could get up to $120 million. That was before the 2 Amazon plants, that was before the Coca-Cola plant, that was before some of these other housing have come up. And so at that time, we really identified about $98 million worth of work, but the board wanted to be fiscally prudent, and they told us to trim it down, so we brought it to $88 million. Today, in 2023, when we pull those numbers, because of the growth in value as well as inflation, we can go after, for a zero mill increase, we can go after 125 million. We're going after 61 million because that's identifying what we feel we need, not go after everything you can get just because. Because if we're ever wrong, we don't want to max out the bonding capacity of our school community just for the frills of it. So, at a high level, and you can find more detail, this gentleman can give it to you if you need it, but the projects that we're looking at is, we have some outdated buses, and we want to make sure that we are on that track. We built bus replacement into our general fund, and the general fund is the same thing that we pay for teachers, we pay for salaries, we pay for transportation, maintenance, all of that stuff. It's not a separate special fund. When you have to pay for these big ticket items, if it becomes too much of a burden, remember, that is the same fund that is used to buy books and educate the kids. It's the same fund that pays for the fuel, the maintenance for these kids. So if you gotta do that, you start to cheat from your students and your staff. Early Childhood Center, just being in this room, you can see some of the examples of leakage that's coming through our roof. So we need to replace sections of the roof in this facility. Technology upgrades, band storage. On the other side of the building, the entryway coming from outside to the cafeteria, we need to expand that, and we need to make that more secure and less of a leaking sieve over there. That's an area in our building that we're not really proud of. And so we thought we would do that in the original bond. That's not doable anymore. Kettle Lake parking lot changes, Harris Ridge playground updates that we need, demolition of the old Dudden. Our view is we will sell it, or we won't know. First, we have to build a new building, so if the bond passes, it's several years off before anything happens, because you got to build the building, then move people. But then we get together with the board, maybe form a committee and figure out the best use. And sometimes, depending on the location, because it's more industrial, you might be able to sell it as is with some minor things that you have to take care of, like taking out the playground for safety and insurance reasons. It will be required to do that. But somebody might want to buy the building the way it sits. In other cases, some companies say, no, this doesn't fit the design of what our company is going to do. And so we're going to have to come and tear this building down and deal with any type of unforeseen issues. And so we're going to offer you substantially less because we got to come in and do all of this work. So sometimes it's better to just demolish it and build in that cost. Scotland Yard, that turf is, what is that, about 10 years old now? 11 years old. Generally, in a poorly kept turf, you'll get about 8 years. In a well-kept turf, you'll get around 13, 14 years. We're already at year 11, so if this bond doesn't pass for safety reasons, we're gonna have to replace that turf. The good thing is when you have turf, is you save thousands of dollars every year because you're not fertilizing it, you're not watering it, you don't have your landscaping crew out there cutting and redoing the lines. You don't have to deal with that, and you get a lot more use out of it. So you may save $50,000, $60,000 a year because you're not putting the man hours in it, but it won't last forever, and eventually you're going to have to replace it. So we're at that point regardless of this bond. The other thing is Calplex. This is the land across the street that our kids use for soccer, baseball. As a community, it is very valuable. We're almost outgrowing the place. We don't have enough parking over there, and so we saw this as a value add. It was originally supposed to be a two-phase project. Community has not been able to come up with the second phase, and we thought that this was a great opportunity to expand it. And if I'm being quite honest, our Caledonia kids use it. Our school system don't, but a lot of elementary kids and even private school elementary kids, it is a community asset in terms of a place for our kids to go and to play and to learn and to compete in that aspect. So we just felt like this is just being a good community asset that we want to invest in. Stadium renovations, that was part of our original bond. It's not doable now based on what we have. We are going to upgrade the turf. We'll probably work on a new scoreboard, but there's just not enough money to renovate the stadium. We thought about building a new one, which is probably double the price of what we were asking for, but our community, they like where it's at. We wanted to keep that sense of tradition and pride. So we just want to renovate it and make it a little bit more modernized as compared to what it was. And then Dutton Elementary was the other. So the total price tag is $61 million. I'm almost done and open for questions. But those were kind of the big buckets of what we're trying to accomplish out of this. Here is an example of, this is where our Dutton Elementary is. I don't know if you can see that little red dot. But if you notice, landscaping, velocity motors, more landscaping, custom boats, concrete factory, micro manufacturing, high grade materials, asphalt, superior asphalt, steel case, Amazon is down here, and Coca-Cola off the screen, Rail Town. The only place that you really see homes is right here. And you also have a fire department here. So think about kids trying to walk or ride their bikes. They gotta go across 68, which is not an idea. There's not really any good walking paths there. And quite honestly, the playground space here is really squeezed. We can't go anywhere because of where, so we're surrounded. And that is one of the big pieces where we're saying, even renovating it on site, we don't feel that that would be the right thing to do for an elementary building. So we have purchased this corner lot here at 76 and Patterson. And we tried to value engineer that facility to say, okay, we can't afford what this thing is anymore to do it the right way. So let's take out some things. And one of the things, if you drive by, like, it was probably great decades ago that all of our schools was right here in the same area. Wonderful, right? But as our community became more desirable, it is a traffic nightmare every 3 o'clock and 7:30.
Right.
So what we wanted to do is identify a space where there was 2 ways to get in and out. And that's what this one does. It provides a path to Patterson for our busing to not have to get tangled with cars. And so we're trying to think futuristic, saying that if we have to do something, we can't change the roads. We're not the road commissioner, but we can try to be smarter on entry and exit points to help that traffic flow a little bit better. So we evaluated about 18 different sites. This is the site that we have purchased and now own for the new Dutton Elementary. And this one is different because there's homes, so there will be a walking path connected here. There will be a safe crossing path here. There's projected to be more homes here. Who knows what this will happen? But there will be homes around an elementary instead of factories around an elementary, which would be much safer for kids to be able to get back and forth and be able to walk or ride their bike to school, which then means less busing necessary for that and less parent pick up and drop off cars because you have sufficient neighborhoods where kids can walk. Again, 0 tax rate increase. Absentee ballots are available March 23rd. So if you are voting early or if you are going back for one last trip to Florida to get a little bit more sun or something, whatever the case is, absentee ballots will be available for issuance starting March 23rd. We do have some other dialogues like this, and this is meant to be, a back and forth exchange. And last but not least, we encourage everyone to vote yes on May 2nd of this year for this bond proposal. So with that, I am done flapping my gums. So I will open it up for questions and response to the best of my ability. Yes, sir.
Can I just interrupt one second? Before, I know some of you might have to leave, so before you do, if anybody would like to have a sign in their yard, that's gonna be available for pickup on March 15th. So if anybody would like to do that, if you leave, I want you to have that information. It'd be the library from 10 to 1. March 15th from 10 to 1. You can pick up a sign.
Public library?
Public library, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, excuse me.
You talked about the stadium,
Yes.
and it's just not doable. So you're gonna try to modernize it in a different way.
Yes.
Okay, what's wrong with what we have to use and get the use out of it, what we planned on, and then 2 years or 3 years beforehand, start planning it and still continue to use it rather than just start doing it right away?
So I'm gonna so the question was, in case you didn't, what are our concerns with the current stadium? And why do we need to modernize it? And what are you gonna do in the meantime, or are you gonna jump into it right away? So I'm gonna let Mr. Hess get started, and I'll add on if he missed something.
I'm not sure if you know who this gentleman is, everybody. This is Matt Hess. He is our operations director, so he is a really important guy that helps us and who's gonna help us get over to the new building. So you wanna know who he is?
Don't be afraid.
That's right.
Yeah.
The current stadium has a number of issues. The actual bleachers themselves, I don't know if you realize it, but when those home bleachers were put in, they were actually purchased used, which shocked me a little bit. But that was, where we were budgetarily at that point. They have definitely at this point reached their life cycle. I know that we've had some welding going on. We've definitely kept them going. The facilities that are available there in terms of power and water are not sufficient for what we're using the stadium for. We're using the stadium longer in the season and earlier in the season and in the spring, So we're not able to actually provide bathroom facilities or running water for a lot of the groups and teams that use it, until, you know, we have to cut it off at a point because it's gonna freeze because the buildings are unheated. Obviously the grass, you know, we're doing turf this summer. The turf will start on May 15th, so that's exciting. And then we, you know, move to the rest of these types of, you know, repairs and upgrades to those buildings. We're not gonna tear any of the buildings down. I think it's gonna look a lot similar. We're just gonna, the siding's falling off the entryway. So it's time to definitely re-up the building and bring some heat, hot water and, you know, usable facilities to that site.
So you're not really planning on rebuilding the whole thing, you're trying to get money to fix it and
Well,
make it a
sort of,
better
yeah.
situation.
We're gonna replace and expand the bleachers, so we can fit more folks on the home side. We're gonna probably, if we can do it, replace the visitor bleachers. We'll change the lighting to LED, which will cut our energy use there by dramatically, because the lighting that's there is extremely expensive to operate. And then, you know, work on upgrading the facilities to make it easier entry. I know we have really bad handicap entry now, so we'd like to improve that. So yeah, it's a lot of just incremental upgrades as we go. We'll do the field this year, and we're gonna redo a lot more as we, you know, if this passes, when this passes.
And so for context, one of our districts that we play against in our conference just did a whole new facility, 17.2 million.
17.1, Kennewick Hills.
Our total thing, new turf, upgrading, all of this stuff, will look really nice for less than half of that amount. So we wanna bring it up to date, but not build new. I had this gentleman, then I'll come over to you.
When will the resource center, the new resource center
Yeah.
be finished?
So the question, new resource center, so our original projection was that this would be open,
Not the end of this year.
All of 2024
It
is
was,
what we had.
yeah,
talked
it was
about.
supposed to be 2024. And so we're thinking we will still hit that. The question is how early or how late into 2024. I'm guessing it's gonna be probably getting close to the summer of 2024. Yes,
Target.
that's kind of our target, if we're lucky, and, you know, weather-wise, and some of the issues that's problematic was, when the materials come in. And so that's been probably more of a challenge than the construction. So we thought this building was gonna be completed in the summer of 2020. It took 6 months longer because we just was waiting for stuff to get in. Now, that's getting better today than what it was, but we are projecting 2024 summerish. Yeah.
To give you an idea, we had a phone call this morning, and for that property, for the community center, going, the transformer, the power transformer just vaporized. They just said, nope, we can't deliver it when you wanted it. We might deliver it 6 months later, we might deliver it 8 months later, so we're searching for a different source. So just the supply chain issues alone are amazing. This is nothing any of us have dealt with before. It's crazy.
Which is part of the reason the
When
cost
that
is
is
up.
done, will Caledonia be able to have their own, like, swim team?
Yes, so our high school swim team right now goes everywhere under the sun, and we rent space. And so having a high school competition pool with integrated diving wells was our first priority. And so that will allow our swim team to be able to practice and host home meets here. So that is our first priority. And in that pool, our agreement with the YMCA is we always get first priority. We will give them a schedule of our practice, a schedule of our meets, and then any time that it's not used by the high school swim team for practice or meets, then the Y would be able to do whatever programming they wanted to do there, because our goal is to make this cost neutral for the districts. Pools are super expensive. They never generate the money necessary to keep it going. Hence our partnership with the YMCA to say, hey, you're used to running pools and generating the revenue by programming. We'd like you to do that here. They avoid the cost of building a facility. We always maintain ownership of the facility. they have to do programming around that. And then there's gonna be a community use pool. It's really probably gonna be more appropriate
So there's
for.
two pools?
There's gonna be two pools. One is more so for like little kids who wanna splash pads, play and stuff like that. And then a bigger pool that be the high school competition pool, but we have some adults who like, that's their exercise. So go in there, do some lap swim,
Right.
do some diving.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have both. One is gonna be smaller, community, more fun. The other one is gonna be more for laps and high school competition.
And the spa.
And the spa.
And the spa.
Yeah,
Spa?
yeah.
What?
So I saw this
Yeah, hot
question
tub?
here, then I'm gonna come to you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So in the slide for the supplemental bond, you know, it said zero, not gonna cost the taxpayer anything. But I haven't heard any details on the dollars and cents. Where's the money coming from? Are you extending the deadline
Yes.
of current bond? How are you gonna pay for it?
So it's really an extension of current debt along with new debt. So think of it like this.
So bad.
Right now, if we did nothing, the debt will be paid off in 2050. By doing this, it's kind of like, if you had your house 70% paid off, but you had some significant renovations and you went and refinanced and took, $10,000 more and said, okay, amortize that out. So that's what we're doing, and
Keeping
now
the
it
same
will take.
payments, but you're extending the
Yeah.
time.
You're keeping the same payments, but you're extending it from 2050 to 2055, keeping the same payments.
Yes, it's the why.
So it's gonna cost an extra 5 years.
So I'm gonna take this lady in the blue in
Sorry.
front of you, and
Just
then
this-
I'll come back.
A simple question, is the Y in charge of the maintenance? I know pools are very expensive to maintain, so is the Y going to?
So I'll let Matt start, and then,
A qualified yes. The Y is going to maintain the daily operations of the pool. So the testing, the water testing requirements, the adjustment of the chemicals, stuff that you have to do day in and day out. When it comes time to do the filter material refreshment, we'll be doing that because obviously it's a larger infrastructure project. So it's kind of a cooperative effort. I have to train all my people in pool operations and they'll be coming in with it. So in the day-to-day maintenance, the day-to-day operation of it, we're gonna depend greatly on the Y. We're gonna take on, obviously,
landlord
the bigger projects.
yeah, the big projects that a owner or landlord should
Yeah.
do, because we wanna make sure it's done right. But the daily operations, the daily maintenance, the daily pH
Testing.
levels, cleaning, testing, that's gonna be the YMCA.
That would be the Y.
Yep.
Yeah, they're really good at
Drain
it
the
too.
Yeah.
pool and change it, whatever, something like that,
That's gonna be the Y. Yeah. So I have the lady in the green, and then I think I saw a question back here. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I have several questions.
Uh-huh.
Okay, one of the questions I have is, you were talking about the taxes that are coming into the school, particularly because of the, various businesses that have moved into the area.
Yes.
And I'm thinking specifically about Amazon,
Yes.
because they're disputing the tax rates, and it's been going on for some time, and I understand it's going to the courts.
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah, they've done that everywhere.
What kind of an impact does that have on our tax base?
So in general, because there's a set rate by Michigan law that they pay 18 mills.
Mm-hmm.
Township officials or county officials working with various companies can reduce that, and that's
Right.
what they've done, and that's what they're disputing.
Right.
And so in general, we all have to pay our fair share, whatever that is collectively to this pie. So
Mhm.
when their fair share is reduced, it distributes that out amongst everyone else.
Right.
And so I think businesses will argue that they pay 18 mills when homeowners pay 7 mills. That's beyond their fair share. I'm not trying to say who pays what, but in general, in theory, when they get a reduced, it spreads out amongst everyone else who can't get a reduced rate. Does that make?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So the direct impact and the number, I don't know until they settle
Settle it.
that agreement. I know we had a company that did something like that before, and they got it all the way down to 0. And we challenged that as a school district. I got a lot of nasty, communication, because I think people didn't understand. Like, I don't wanna set the rate, but we all have some responsibility for living in our community. And so I challenge, like, a freebie is not necessary. So, yeah, so if that rate goes down, it will have an impact. And I don't wanna speak negatively about it, because they're also working with us, directly providing some resources and access and funding to schools that they don't, there's nothing that requires them to do that.
Right.
But if their rate goes down, and that's not just Amazon, that's any business, then that burden is gonna be shared. And so that is the same thing that affects our property values, our ability to upgrade and maintain our roads, our fire, our safety, all of that stuff is all baked in.
You said Amazon's done this before. Have they been successful then in these?
In various places across the country, my understanding is that they have been, and a lot of large companies kind of play this, hey, we come in, we bring jobs, and in order for us to choose you versus somewhere else, we'd like to see a lower tax rate.
But don't they all do that pre-build? I thought they all negotiated that. That's why
Most of them
different
do it
states-
pre-build, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought they had a 10-year or something, I don't know what it is, like tax relief or something.
I don't know
To
the,
build that.
yeah, I don't know the specifics on theirs, but most of the time it's determined up front. Sometimes companies wanna revisit that based on whatever's going on in the economy. It could be, hey, we're struggling. I don't know their story, I don't know the details of it, but you're right, most of the time it's pre-built. But I have seen companies go back and re-argue their case. Yes, sir.
You talked about the Scotland Yard, how much we're gonna save, as far as man hours go and maintenance.
Yes.
How much more are we gonna spend to get that savings?
So that one probably won't be as expensive as the current football field, because there's some infrastructure there.
That's what I asked you.
But I don't know that number. Do you know that, what we're protecting?
I don't wanna,
Because there's gotta be a payoff somewhere,
Yeah.
So.
Do
So-
all, you know what the Scotland Yard is?
No.
It is
The
where the kids do lacrosse and soccer.
Yes.
It's over here on this property.
Yeah.
So I will say this, I'm gonna give you a number, and please don't hold me to it, because if you do, I'm gonna ask you to tell me what the exact weather temperature will be on May 2nd. I'm thinking somewhere in the the 800,000 to the $1.2 million range, give or take.
probably closer to the 8, so.
Additional to that, to make it become what you want it to, for us, basically?
I didn't understand your question.
You said it was gonna be less maintenance, less everything.
Yes.
And you're putting a good sale on to us, like, oh boy, we're gonna save money. But anytime I've learned about saving money, somewhere along the line, you're gonna pay for it in the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at. How much more is it gonna cost us to put that in? Is it gonna be beneficial?
So we believe it's gonna be beneficial, because you're right, you're gonna pay one way or the other. So you pay up front to put the turf in and minimal maintenance, and what you're saving is the man hours. So right now, we don't have,
To maintain it.
yeah, you gotta maintain it.
Yeah.
And so that maintenance cost every year is going to be very minimal to zero, because it's turf. But when you have to replace it, my guess is about 800,000 to 1.2, because it's gonna be a couple years before we replace it. And so we have to factor in what we think the cost will be in the future, which is a guess. What we know today is how much it cost us if we had to maintain it like we do the football field. And the problem we would have with that is we would have to probably start kicking off some of our programs, because if you go play soccer or lacrosse on a day that it rains, it tears up the field, and then we gotta wait for a period of time to use it, or we gotta pay more to get the side, to get the grass right. And so we either pay more built into, now I gotta spend an extra 3 hours to get this field back into shape, extra fertilizer and seeding, and I gotta get the community upset because they can't use it.
Cause that's us, that would be us.
Yes.
Honest to God, that's us.
They
That's
can't
us.
use it, or I'm gonna pay this 800,000, that's what the number is, and I don't have to worry about that for another 10 years, and I'm saving $50,000 a year
That's what I
in
wanted-
man hours.
That's what I wanted to
That's what
find
he
out.
wants
Yeah.
to know.
Is what are we saving versus what we're gonna be spending?
Yeah.
What would you guess I know, I'm putting them on the spot. I can see his eyes.
After 11 years, what have you saved?
It's like buying a composite deck and you don't have to stain, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's,
Yeah, definitely, the return on investment is definitely shorter than the lifespan of the turf. I can't say, I don't have a number that I say I spend every year on just specifically Scotland Yard, but we will definitely have a lot of reduced maintenance and time over there that we spend.
Well, if it's
so.
been 50,000
Yeah,
a year to maintain it, well, then you just take that times,
yes.
and
But
it's,
and you got your number.
Yeah,
And it's
and
so
I
much
made up
more.
the 50,000 number,
Yeah.
I gotta
Oh, well,
say that.
that's okay, you can.
Cause we don't like isolate it to say how much was the fertilizer, how
Sure.
much was the water.
Right.
Because when the water bill comes, it comes for that one and several others, so it's hard to isolate it out. How many hours they had to spend on it, and then the lost opportunity cost. So we haven't looked at it that way. I've heard in other places, numbers range from, it takes 8 years to 10 years to get to the break even, get your money back.
And in this case.
I don't
the
know
yard-
if that's accurate though.
And in this case, the yard is a replacement, it's already turf. It's already synthetic turf over there, so we're looking to replace it and fix the base so that we don't have head injuries on our players and things like that. So our maintenance costs are already fairly low over there, but now we're looking at putting a better surface on there for safety and reasons. Where we're really gonna see the huge savings is what we're doing at the stadium. So they'll pair together and the use will be, higher at both locations.
well, and just a reminder that this is all about the kids, like, this is all about doing these things so that our kids have better opportunities and continued opportunities. So you just bought your kid, through me, you came in and you paid for their lacrosse lesson, they're gonna take lacrosse for the first time. And I gotta call you up and say, it is so rainy right now that we have to eliminate that program to save it for our high school kids. So what they're trying to do is replace this so that kids of all ages can use these fields. And there's less, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah.
So yeah, the exact net or break even, I don't know what that point is. I can only tell you what it has been estimated. I have not seen the science. But I would say, yeah, 8 to 10 year before you hit that break even point. So after that, you're probably in the positive, but you also reach a life cycle point where now the field is so hard, it becomes dangerous. Yes, ma'am.
Can you put the picture up of the new duck?
That's the one.
Mhm.
So I live on 76th Street near Patterson,
Mhm.
and I was so hoping it was going on the other side of Patterson. And it's an elementary school, and parents line up an hour ahead of time to pick their kids up.
Yes, they
And
do.
they're lining up all over the roads.
Yes.
That's a four-way stop there. What do you have for the traffic that's gonna go there? What do you have set up to handle it?
So I will give you part of it and he can fill in the gaps. It is a much bigger runway to get cars off the street than what we have at Dudley.
That's not hard.
That's not.
Yeah, okay. That's a fair point. It is significantly bigger in terms of the parking lot space, the drop off and pickup space to bring many more cars off there. What we're also hoping to see is fewer cars because you have these communities that are now walkable, so we don't have to bus them.
That area, I moved here
Uh-huh.
just a couple of years ago.
So that area that's right by the school, those people went to Dutton already?
No, we're gonna have to rezone.
Okay, that's what I read.
So every couple years, this is the drawback when you go to the defined zones, the way we did it. It's more efficient, but every couple years, you have to rezone because the elementary kids are no longer in elementary, or, you know, communities change. So in about 5 to 7 years, you're gonna find some points in your community where you say, you know what, these kids now need to go to this building to keep this building from being too overly occupied or too few kids going there. So when we bring on a new building, we're gonna be reaching that 5 to 7 year window anyway, and it's gonna be time for us to rezone, because Emmons and Kettle is kind of really full, and so we need to kind of balance that out and shift some of those kids. But we couldn't do it now if we wanted to, because Dutton is too small of a building. This gives us bigger space, so we can send more kids there and relieve pressure in some of our other buildings.
How much additional square footage do you have at the proposed new building?
So we're moving to, what is that gonna be, 60? So the question is, how much more square footage is gonna be in this building as compared to
I
the
believe it's
current?
about 25,000 square feet bigger, so it
Yeah.
goes from, Dutton is a two-strand?
Dutton is a
Three,
two-strand.
two or three. So in other words, with a strand of kids, K through 4.
Right.
Okay, so you can do 2 groups of those. The new building will actually be set up for 4 strands of that. So we're adding on about 25,000
But you're
square foot
basically
more.
doubling the size of the building.
Pretty much,
Yes.
yeah. Dutton is not, the existing Dutton is really a very small place.
And that will
It's
bring,
like
yeah,
classrooms are small.
and doubling the size of the building, bring it to a similar capacity of all of our other elementary buildings, with the exception of Cal-El. Cal-El can do it, but it's a real tight squeeze, so part of this is we're gonna add 2 more classrooms to Cal-El, so they all can have 4 strands for K, first, second, all the way up to 4th grade.
Okay.
And that also, thank you, that also gives us room for growth, because in total, when we moved to this new configuration, we looked at the district could grow another 1,000 kids and not have to add a 5th elementary building or another middle school. Because we have some capacity now at the high school. We have some more increased capacity at Craft and in this building. And we'll have these 2 additional strands at Dutton, which will relieve some overflow for Emmons Lake and Kettle, and have some capacity for growth. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Even
Yes,
with
sir,
the
and then
building
I'm
at
gonna come back.
Dutton,
What's that?
even with the building at Dutton, once it's built, you'll still have room at the new location.
Yes.
If you want, if the need comes to.
Yes.
You'll still be able to expand there.
Yes,
So
exactly.
you can have 6, maybe,
Yeah, this
runs
is,
of-
whenever we build new schools, not like the old days, but now when we build new schools, we always try to put a stub on the end somewhere where the heating system stops, and you can just connect to it and go, and move on and build another wing or add on a piece of the building. It's a little more challenging with a lot of new codes, but yeah, we try to keep them as flexible and growth opportunities as we can without having too much interruption.
like I say, that location would be, able to handle.
Yeah, because we have much more land space.
23 acres.
23 acres as compared to 13 acres.
Another 10 acres.
Yeah,
Part of it.
So
not-
basically easily double.
we can easily double. Yes, ma'am.
It's a 4-way stop there now. Are you working with the road commission at all? Will be anything change there?
Yeah, the road commission is, they're amazing to work with. Patterson south of the intersection will get a right turn lane into the school. There'll be a left turn lane added in the middle, so it widens up that part of the road.
Yeah.
76th Street gets widened going east of the intersection to allow for a partial left turn lane into the school and a smaller leading edge right turn lane. It's a little bit of a challenge because of the wetlands that are there. And there's some structures that are real close to the road, so it's a little bit tighter, but yeah, we do work with them pretty closely. Yeah.
Any possibility of getting that swamp, the little swamp along 76th Street, moved to the north side and then the north side pushed back?
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
76th Street
Yeah.
a 5-lane road like,
Yeah, I wish the swamp wasn't a protected wetland.
I know.
I call it a drainage ditch, they call it a protected wetland.
I know.
There is development on the north corner too going in now, so.
I know.
We're part of a giant water main project there, so yeah, we're, a lot of development
But
in that
there's
area.
no talk about changing that from a 4-way to a light.
Not that
Not
I'm
at the
aware of.
moment, no.
It's a totally different meeting.
I'm not in charge of that meeting.
Well, I'm just saying, you're gonna have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
It'll come.
Be careful because they'll probably wanna put in a roundabout.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh.
I don't know how many
All the
times.
grandmas would be like, where am I?
Up behind me and they're off on the other side of the white line and.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a challenging intersection.
And then if there's a kid there, that kid gets run over.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we're, it's gonna be really hard for us to find the perfect situation, but when we looked and evaluated like 18 different land sites, that was one of the things that struck us and the board, like, given our community, given that we can't change the roads, and we actually own some property that we could have built on, but it was going to be much worse than what we're predicting because there was one way in, one way out, and it was even on it was on roads designed for even less traffic. So we're saying like, we might as well sell those because there's nothing feasible unless the community just shrink at a massive level that would make those 2 properties that we own, or 3 properties actually, available for us to add another school of any type, because it's gonna be much worse. The school will be the driver of that traffic. Like, the Patterson, that's a main pass-through for several reasons.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding.
And so, the good and the bad of that is because of everything else, if the road commission is gonna do something, they're more likely to do it there than they are on some of these other spots where we already own land. So we could put a building there, because it'd be cheaper, but it's just gonna make it much worse. Kind of like having 2 buildings right here in the football stadium, like as our community have grown, the driver is the school traffic. Any other time they're saying there's not enough when they do the count to ever wanna do something. Patterson, Amazon, people living, all of that stuff, they go by counts, how many times that roadway is used, and that drives where the funding goes, that if they're going to upgrade or improve because of that. School counts will not be enough, because what they always say is, well, it's busy between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, and then it's dead, and then it's busy between, 2:45 and 3:30, and then it's dead, and we won't do anything.
Good.
Oh, other questions or concerns? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, which question was I looking at here? I don't know either.
Oh, that's all right.
Oh, one of the questions I had was regarding the Dutton site. Do you foresee any kind of environmental issues as far as our ability to sell it?
Thankfully, no.
No.
That's, that building was built early enough that it doesn't have the middle year challenges that like this building would.
Right.
So there's exceptionally little asbestos in there. There's exceptionally little, lead paint or anything like that. So, I mean, there's always lead paint, we're gonna
Right.
say it's there. But there's really not a lot going on there. We had a lot of the asbestos removed years ago. So that one's fairly low on the radar for any environmental issues.
What about the land itself? I'm thinking the runoff from the manufacturing facilities around you or whatever,
Well, the good news
That's
is,
gonna have an
if we
impact.
sell it to a manufacturer or something like that, they won't worry too much about that.
Yeah.
And Dutton actually sits a little higher
Okay.
than a lot of the surrounding properties, so
Okay.
it's generally been running away from us, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, so there's no known problems
Yeah.
there.
Okay,
We don't anticipate any, but we wanted to make sure we had funds just in case we accidentally run into something. Because you don't know, like, we can tell you that any building built after a certain point, it is like 99.9% chance that they're gonna have asbestos.
Mhm.
And it's okay to be in the building
Yeah.
until you start to renovate more
Right.
things.
Then you
Then
get it
the
out.
asbestos
Then you
come
gotta
out.
wear
Right, it will
protective
become
and-
airborne, and now you gotta deal with it. So
Right.
like when you pop up old tiles, the glue that they put those in with 20 years ago, guarantee you that it's gonna be asbestos now, when you start that renovation. As long as you don't disturb it, it's fine. But we're applying that same thinking to, let's make sure we have a little pot of money to deal with some stuff, if
Okay.
that comes up. Because we wanna try to get the best value for that property, whatever it is. And if we have to demolish it, we wanna have the money there. If we run into some issues, we wanna have the money there. If not, then great, and we can funnel that back into some other projects and things that didn't make the list for this bond. Because it's just like a home. There's always something that's gonna break if you use it sooner or later.
right.
But we don't know of anything, and we're not expecting anything, but given the location of what it's surrounded by,
You never know.
we wanna be prepared.
Okay.
Yes,
Would it
sir.
be possible, like the playground equipment you were saying something about, could that be reused, say at, the new location, or?
From a school district perspective, no. So a lot of times, unfortunately, I think they do it just to make money, but every couple of years, they go by and they kind of change the standards of what is considered appropriate or safe.
That's my husband's job, I don't know if I can say that.
So a lot of that equipment, like an individual privately can use it, but it will become obsolete. We can't like pick it up and put it to a new location. And insurance wise, they're saying if you're not using it, you need to take it down, because if any kid goes there and play on it and get hurt, and I've had that experience in another district when they decommissioned a building,
They left the playground equipment there, so.
and we were liable for that.
Got hurt?
Yeah.
There's also long-term liabilities in the sale of it, so if we like sold it to someone and someone got hurt down the road, we would still own part of the liability of that. So, which is, I know, that's crazy, but, you know, they'll say we didn't maintain it, so there's all kinds of, really good insurance reasons and liability reasons that we will take it down quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thankfully, it's not real new, so that's good.
yeah.
It's definitely been used well.
Other questions?
Well, I wanna thank you guys all, I know some of you have been here since 9 o'clock, so I really appreciate the Women's Club moving their meeting
Yes, thank
early,
you.
so that we could accommodate and have you all in here, we really do, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your support as always, I really do. I take it personal that you all wanna be here and support what we have going on, so thank you very much.
Thank you.